Hi folks, and welcome back to another Travels of Red Rover. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Corinne.
And where are we today, Corinne?
Today we are in Spearfish Canyon, and this canyon is near Spearfish, South Dakota. We're going to do a trail to some waterfalls. There's actually two waterfalls in this area. We're going to the Roughlock Falls first.
Yep, it should be a good day, but first we got about a 3/4 mile hike up to the falls.
Well, we've arrived at Roughlock Falls a couple hours after sunrise. We have a half, 3/4 of a mile hike into the falls, and parts of the walk are quite brightly lit, and other parts, like where I am now, is shadowed. So I'm not quite sure whether we'll find the falls have been all lit and we'll get a lot of exposures that are quite bright, or whether it'll still be in shadows still down at this end of the canyon. Shawn and I are hoping that it's not too brightly lit yet, so that we don't blow out the highlights. It's really lovely. Lots of birds singing right along the Spearfish Creek. It's still quiet, not too many hikers yet, even though it's a Sunday morning. So we've just seen a couple people, but shouldn't be too crowded up at the falls yet. There's a little footbridge that crosses the stream right here at Roughlock Falls. And you look this way, and the falls are up there past that stark birch trunk flowing down. This would make a nice photo location except for that trunk.
So it was a beautiful walk up to Havelock Falls this morning. Unfortunately, we got here a touch too late. The sun had already come over the top and was lighting up the stone mast that's off to the left-hand side up there, which makes the highlights really difficult to deal with. A little bit of light on the falls was no big deal. Just two-stop ND filter sort of solves that problem, gives me the right kind of exposure length that I want. Right now I'm shooting this at about a f11. I'm using about 8/10 of a second for my shutter speed. I like that because it gives me the nice frothy, foamy water coming down, which but at the same time leaves enough detail in it that you can tell it's a waterfall. I'm also using a soft filter, a 4-stop soft ND filter on the top to try to bring some of the highlights down, especially on these stones back here and the top of the upper waterfall for doing the larger shot. Otherwise, you just focus in more on this part of the waterfall and they kind of ignore the rest, and you can still get by with a pretty nice shot just of the little waterfall.
Generally speaking, Corinne and I don't really show much about how we edit photographs in post-production. And if the truth be known, we don't actually edit them very much at all. We've taken great trouble trying to get all the settings in that we want into the camera and then use that to create the photograph that we'd like you to see. However, with the light being so harsh and bright around the edges of these photographs, I decided it would be useful to add a little bit of editing information and give you an opportunity to see how different the photographs look. So here's the photograph that I was just talking about in the field, and as you can see, it's extremely bright on the top, and it tends to draw the eye up into the top left corner of the photograph. So much of the editing that goes into this photograph has taken that into account, and it's trying to bring the eye back into and onto the actual waterfall. Now, generally speaking, I take a very, very light hand to editing a photograph. Typically, I crop it a little bit and will sometimes brighten a few areas that are a little bit dark in the shadows. In this photograph, I've decided to be a little bit more extreme, mostly to help you see the changes and where the changes are in the photograph. So this photograph I'm about to show you isn't actually what I would typically have as a final photograph, but it is a good way to show you some of the things I've done. Now, the most obvious thing that I've done is to create a vignette around the edge of the photograph. This really reduces the amount of brightness on the edges of the photograph and brings your eye back towards the center. I've also used the circle brush in Lightroom to actually really brighten the waterfall. Now, in this photograph, I've probably overdone that, and in reality wouldn't do it as quite as intently as you're seeing here. In addition to the vignetting and the brightening of the falls in general, I've also gone in with a brush and then just lightened up the center water column of the photograph and some of the rocks around the edge of it to give it a bit more punch. So in this final version of the photograph, you can see that I've backed off some of the brightness in the waterfall and balanced that out. Actually, what I've done is blurred the edge of it back into the brightness around the photograph, especially up in the top left-hand corner. This makes the photograph look a little bit more natural, but also still keeps your eye focused on the waterfall. Anyway, I hope this helps. It gives you an idea about how we think about photographs. And although the light was not great for doing these types of photographs at a waterfall, it did make for a great opportunity to show you why this can be a challenge. And to give you an idea how we might approach correcting a photograph that we'd really like to keep. We'd also be interested in knowing if you would like to see us do more of this kind of commentary on the photographs. So if you would like that, please leave us a comment down below, and if you don't, then leave us that comment as well.
Well, we made it up here to Roughlock Falls. It's a gorgeous little multi-tiered waterfall. Even way in the back, in the bright light, there's another cascade coming down. It seems like we've gotten here maybe an hour too late. Some of the waterfalls are really brightly lit in this lower corner, and it's really hard to balance out the exposure for the shadows and the highlights. So what I've been trying to do is just focus in on a lower part that's mostly in shade and capturing that part of the cascade of water. And so that's how I framed up my picture. And I've used a polarizing filter to try and take down the glare, and made sure I've balanced out my exposure as best as I can. I have increased the ISO so that I don't get too much blur on the water. I just want to get a nice velvety look, but I don't want to overdo it. So I'm about ISO 640.
So this is the photograph that you just saw off the back of Corinne's camera. And as you can see, it has some of the similar problems that the first photograph we took. in the sense that the top right-hand corner now is quite a bit brighter than the waterfall and tends to draw your eye in that direction. Now, in some ways, that's not so bad for this photograph because the eye is sort of drawn from the bottom left through to the top right corner. And quite frankly, you could sort of just leave the photograph as is and it would be okay. However, I think that if you could remove some of the top right-hand corner of the photograph and just have the waterfall, it may be a slightly more attractive photograph. The editing on this photograph was actually pretty straightforward. Most of the reduction in the brightness in the top right-hand corner of the photograph could be accomplished by simply taking a 1:1 crop. And now the photograph really highlights the waterfall. And in fact, actually what also shows up is that beautiful little waterfall that's in the top right-hand corner of the photograph. So in many ways, you really don't need to do a great deal more to this photograph. As it turns out, all that was added was a circular filter to bring up a little bit more of the brightness in the waterfall. But otherwise, this is pretty close to the original. One of the things that I don't like about this particular photograph is that the brightness in the top right-hand corner tended to give the photograph a bit of a pop, and you lose that with this editing. So I'm not sure this is actually better, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment in the section down below.
This is a particularly nice waterfall because it gives you an opportunity to try out a lot of different compositions. If they would clear a little bit of the dead logs along here, it would even be better. But you know, it is what it is, and you have to photograph what you find. They have done a nice job at building a wood walkway along the waterfall, which is nice and solid, and it has some very good, fairly obvious indentations and little platforms that go out a little bit to give you a really good opportunity to see the waterfall.
So I decided to try and focus on a smaller part of the waterfall rather than trying to get all the cascades. And what I noticed is this lovely little birch tree behind me that had a branch coming out from the main trunk in a bit of a V shape. So I framed up a portion of the waterfall within the birch tree branch in the trunk. The problem is that the tree is very close to the walkway, and so I don't really want to try and get in the man-made walkway in my picture. So I've been working very diligently to crop my picture so that I only get the natural components of the environment.
One of the nice things about getting to a spot early and before all the other folks that want to come and look at this beautiful waterfall is that you have the ability to kind of pick your spot and work your shots without really disturbing a lot of other folks, which I think is excellent. It's something that we as photographers need to remember from time to time, that we're not the only ones that want to enjoy this beautiful area. And being here early and having an empty boardwalk really makes it nice. So in addition to the lower platforms to see the falls, there's an upper platform as well. And we're just taking a quick hike up to the upper platform to see what it looks like. We've actually never been up here before, so it's kind of a little, it's a little bit of exercise. It's got me panting here to get up to the top. So we'll show you what it looks like here in a minute. So the upper falls is also very lovely. The platform is a little bit back from the edge, so it's a little hard to get a really good composition up here, but it's still really a pretty fall. Definitely worth the walk up.
The top of the falls has a lovely little walkway back to a park-like area with toilets, picnic tables, and a fairly large play area for the kids.
Hi folks again. Well, we sure hope you enjoyed this video today. And if you did, please give us a thumbs up.
And if you'd like to see more of our videos, I hope you'll consider subscribing.
Subscribing really does help us out. Until we get to 1,000 subscribers, our videos really aren't distributed very far, so you're helping us out getting these videos to a wider audience, and we really appreciate that. And then when you want to know when we release a video, hit that little bell button down in the corner there. And in that case, YouTube will tell you when we release our videos.
And if you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, we'd love to hear it. If you've been to Spearfish Canyon and you have some experience with it, we'd love to hear about your experience.
And also, if you have friends that might enjoy this content, please share it. And we'd really appreciate that as well. Anyway, that's the video wrap for today. Thank you much for coming along, and bye for now.
Bye for now.